The rain fell in cold, silver needles across the empty parking lot of the 24-hour supermarket, turning the asphalt into a black glass. Daniel Hargrove sat in his heated leather seat, engine idling, wipers sweeping slow arcs while he finished a work call. It was past midnight, the kind of hour when the world feels half erased. He was about to pull away when movement near the storefront caught his eye. A woman in a soaked hoodie was on her knees in front of the automatic doors, palms pressed together, pleading with the tired cashier inside. Her voice cracked through the glass, raw and desperate. Something about the tilt of her head, the way her wet hair clung to her neck, made Daniel's breath stall. It was Elena. 10 years had passed since the divorce papers were signed. 10 years since Elena walked out with nothing but a suitcase and a promise to never look back. She had been radiant then. Sharp cheekbones, designer coats, the kind of woman who made strangers turn on the street. Now she looked small, swallowed by an oversized gray sweatshirt, face gaunt, shoes split at the seams. Daniel killed the engine without thinking. The rain hit him like ice water the moment he stepped out. Elena? She froze. Slowly, her head turned. Even in the sickly fluorescence of the store lights, he saw the flicker of recognition, then shame so deep it looked like pain. Daniel. Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from cold or crying. He couldn't tell. He took a hesitant step closer. What were you doing out here? She tried to stand, legs shaking, and nearly fell. Instinct overrode everything else. He caught her elbow and pulled her up. She weighed nothing. Up close, he saw the dark circles under her eyes, the tremor in her lips. I lost my wallet, she said, not meeting his gaze. They won't let me take the groceries without paying. My kids, they haven't eaten since yesterday. The word kids hit him like a fist. She had never wanted children with him. That had been one of the final fractures. You have kids now? He asked, softer than he meant to. She gave a tiny nod, then looked away as fresh tears mixed with the rain on her face. Daniel's mind raced. The proud, uncompromising woman who once told him she'd rather die than ask for help was begging a night shift cashier for a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter. Come on, he said, already steering her toward his car. Get in. You're freezing. No, Daniel, I can't. I'm not leaving you in a parking lot at midnight. Get in the damn car, Elena. She hesitated only a second longer, then let him guide her to the passenger side. The moment the door shut and the heater blasted warm air, she folded forward, face in her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He pulled out a lot, windshield wipers beating a frantic rhythm. Neither spoke for miles. Finally, he glanced over. Where am I taking you? She wiped her face with the sleeve of the soaked hoodie. Anywhere but where I've been living. He tightened his grip on the wheel. Start talking. She laughed, a broken sound. You're going to love this. Remember how I left you because I said I deserved more? Turns out the more I chased was a professional con artist with a dazzling smile and a talent for disappearing with every dime I had. He left me with 2 months pregnant with twins. Daniel's foot eased off the gas. I thought I could do it alone, she went on, voice trembling. Pride, right? Classic Elena. I burned every bridge, including yours. Then the jobs dried up. Then the apartment. Then, she gestured vaguely at herself. This. He pulled into the driveway of his house. The same house they had bought together. The one she once called too suburban. The porch light was on a timer. It bathed the brick in soft gold. Elena stared. You still live here? Never could sell it, he said quietly. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar and coffee, unchanged. She stood dripping in the foyer, looking terrified to move. Bathroom still upstairs, he said. Towels are in the same place. I'll find you something dry. She didn't argue. While she showered, Daniel stood in the kitchen gripping the counter. So hard his knuckles went white. Memories flooded him. Her laughter echoing off these walls, the fights, the night she packed her bags while he begged her stay. He had hated her for years. Now hatred felt distant, blurred by the image of her on her knees in the rain. When she came down 20 minutes later wearing his old Yale sweatshirt and a pair of his sweatpants, cinched tight at the waist. Her wet hair was twisted up in a towel. She looked 18 again, except for the exhaustion carved into every line of her face. He slid a mug of tea across the island. Drink. She wrapped both hands around it like it was the only warm thing left in the world. They sat in silence until she finally spoke. I don't expect anything from you, Daniel. I didn't know where else to go tonight. He studied her. Where are the kids now? With a neighbor, she said one night. That's it. After that, her voice cracked again. I'm so scared he's going to call CPS. Daniel exhaled slowly. Something iron-hard inside his chest, the resentment he'd nursed for a decade, began to crack. Finish your tea, he said. Then we're going to get your kids. Her head snapped up, eyes wide. What? You heard me. Daniel, no. You don't owe me. I'm not doing it for you. He met her gaze, unflinching. I'm doing it for two little kids who haven't eaten. And because I'm not the man you left anymore. She stared at him, tears spilling over again, but this time she didn't hide them. Half an hour later, they were back in his SUV, driving through the rain to a crumbling apartment complex on the edge of town. Elena led him up 3 flights of outside stairs that reeked of mildew and fried onions. She knocked softly on a door painted peeling green. A tired woman in scrubs opened it, took one look at Daniel, then at Elena's borrowed clothes, and raised an eyebrow but stepped aside. In the cramped living room, too small and curled under a thin blanket on the couch, were a boy and a girl, maybe 4 years old, identical dark curls, cheeks flushed with sleep. Elena knelt, whispering, Babies, wake up. We're going somewhere safe. The little boy blinked up at Daniel with huge, wary eyes. The girl clutched a worn stuffed dinosaur. Daniel crouched so he was at their level. Hi, I'm Daniel. Your mom says you like peanut butter sandwiches. I happen to make the best ones in the state. Want to come find out? The little girl studied him for a long moment, then held out her dinosaur as if offering a peace treaty. He took it gently. We'll bring him with us. He looks hungry, too. 20 minutes later, both kids were buckled into back seat. Daniel's car had never had car seats. He improvised with blankets and prayers, fast asleep again before they reached the highway. Elena stared out the window, tears running silently. Back home, he carried the sleeping boy while Elena carried the girl. He tucked them into the guest room that had once been meant for a nursery. They never filled. The kids stirred only long enough to curl into each other like puppies. When he closed the door softly, Elena was waiting in the hallway, arms wrapped around herself. I don't understand why you're doing this, she whispered. He looked at her for a long time. Because 10 years ago, I promised to love you in sickness and in health, for better or worse. You walked away before you could find out what worse really meant. His voice was steady, but something raw flickered in his eyes. Maybe this is God or karma, or just dumb luck giving us a second chance to get right. But I'm not letting those kids wake up tomorrow in a place where their mother has to beg for bread. She started to speak, but he held up a hand. Tomorrow we figure out the rest. Lawyers, money, whatever it takes. Tonight, you all sleep here. Safe. She broke then, a sob escaping as she covered her mouth. He pulled her into his arms without thinking. The way he used to when the world was simpler. She clung to him, shaking. After a minute, she pulled back just enough to look up at him, eyes searching his face. Daniel, I'm so sorry. For everything. He brushed a strand of damp hair from her cheek. I know, he said softly. Me too. And in the quiet of the hallway, with 2 small children sleeping soundly down the hall and rain still tapping against the windows, something that had been broken for a decade began very carefully to mend. But the story wasn't over. Because the next morning, when Daniel went to wake the kids with promised peanut butter sandwiches, he found something on the kitchen counter that made his blood run cold. A crumpled photograph of Elena and the twins, taken just weeks ago, tucked inside an envelope addressed to him in handwriting he didn't recognize. And on the back, in red ink, a single sentence. She never stopped belonging to me. Daniel stood frozen, the envelope trembling between his fingers. The photograph was crisp, professional, taken in a park he didn't recognize, Elena laughing on a picnic blanket, the twins chasing bubbles, sunlight catching in their curls. On the back, the red ink looked wet, though it had already dried into the paper like a wound. Elena appeared in the doorway behind him, hair tousled from sleep, still wearing his old sweatshirt. She took one look at his face and stopped breathing. "What is that?" He turned the photo so she could see. All color drained from her cheeks. That's from 6 weeks ago," she whispered. "The only copies are on my broken phone. I never printed them." Daniel's pulse hammered at his ears. "Who is me, Elena? Who never stopped owning you?" Her knees buckled. She caught the edge of the counter, eyes wide with animal terror. "He found us. Oh, God, he found us." "Talk. Now." She slid down until she was sitting on the kitchen tiles, arms wrapped around her shins. "His real name is Victor Navarro, the twins' father. I only knew him as Vic Saint. He's not just a con artist, Daniel. He moves millions. Drugs, art, people, whatever pays. When I got pregnant, he said children were a liability. Told me to handle it. I ran instead. He let him think I did what he asked. Changed my name. Burned every bridge. Came here where he'd never look." Daniel crouched in front of her. "You've been hiding from a cartel-level criminal for 5 years, and you never told anyone? I thought if I stayed quiet, stayed poor, stayed invisible, he'd forget I existed." Her laugh cracked. "I was wrong." Footsteps padded down the hallway. The little boy appeared first, dinosaur clutched to his chest, eyes enormous. "Mama, I'm hungry." Elena wiped her face in one frantic swipe and forced a smile that almost looked real. "Morning, baby. Go wake your sister. Uncle Daniel's making special sandwiches." The boy studied Daniel solemnly, then nodded and scampered off. Daniel waited until the guest room door clicked shut. "How did the picture get on my counter?" "I don't know." Her voice shook. "The doors were locked. Windows, too. I checked twice." He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over 911, then stopped. If Victor Navarro was who she said, police might only make the children collateral damage. "We need to leave," he said instead. "Today. I have a cabin 3 hours north, off-grid, under a shell company even I forget the name of sometimes. We go now." She stared at him. "You do that? After everything?" "Stop asking me that. Start packing whatever the kids need." While Elena gathered clothes and a few belongings she'd carried in a plastic grocery bag the night before, Daniel moved to the house like a man preparing for siege. He unplugged the Alexa, disabled the doorbell camera, wiped his phone's location history. In the safe behind the winter coats, he retrieved the Glock he hadn't touched since the divorce range days with his brother, 2 loaded magazines, and $10,000 in cash he kept for emergencies that had never come. When he came back downstairs, the twins were sitting at the island, legs swinging, identical peanut butter smiles. Elena had managed to braid the girl's hair and find a clean sweatshirt for the boy that hung to his knees. Daniel set a duffel on the floor. "We're going on an adventure," he told the kids. "Secret treehouse, bears, the whole deal. But we have to leave super quiet, like ninjas. Can you do that?" 2 small heads nodded vigorously. They were backing out of the driveway in his black Tahoe. Tinted windows, no GPS subscription active, when Daniel noticed a sedan. It was a nondescript gray Camry parked half a block down under a broken streetlight. He couldn't see the driver, but the silhouette didn't move as they passed. In the rear-view mirror, its headlights came on 30 seconds later. He took the long route to the highway, doubling back twice, running 2 amber lights. The Camry stayed 3 cars behind, never aggressive, never falling back far enough to lose them. Elena's knuckles were white on the door handle. That's one of the spotters. They just watch, report. They don't grab. They wait till you're somewhere isolated. Daniel's jaw flexed. Then we don't get isolated. He pulled a sudden hard right into the underground garage of the downtown Marriott, flew down the ramp, ignoring the ticket arm, and parked sideways across 2 handicap spots. He killed the engine. Everybody out. Fast. They abandoned the Tahoe and took the elevator to the lobby, Daniel shielding the kids with his body. He handed Elena a baseball cap from the duffel. She tucked her hair up and pulled it low. In the gift shop, he bought 2 tourist sweatshirts. Garish, I Red Heart, the city logos, and a $20 stuffed orca for each twin. 5 minutes later, they walked out the hotel side entrance, looking like every other exhausted family returning from a red-eye. A yellow cab idled at the stand. Daniel opened the door, ushered them in, and gave the driver the address of a car rental lot 20 miles west he'd used once after an airport fender bender. Cash tip up front, no questions. Only when they were rolling again did he let himself breathe. At the rental lot, he paid for a gray Highlander under the name of his college roommate who died years ago. Fake license still renewed out of stupid sentimentality. The clerk barely glanced up from her phone. By the time the sun was fully up, they were northbound on a 2-lane state road. Christmas music turned low. Twins asleep in their booster seats, Elena had somehow thought to grab from her neighbor's porch. Snow started to fall in fat, lazy flakes. Elena stared out the passenger window. He'll burn your life down for helping me, Daniel. Your firm, your credit, your name, everything. That's what he does. Let him try, Daniel said quietly. I've spent 10 years building something solid. Turns out I'm ready to risk it for something that actually matters. She turned to look at him, eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall in front of the kids. They reached the cabin just after noon, a low cedar house tucked against a ridge, invisible from the road, solar panels hidden under snow. Inside it smelled of pine and wood smoke. Daniel got the fireplace roaring while Elena settled the twins on the couch with blankets and the new Orcus. When the kids were finally asleep again, Elena stood at the window watching snow pile against the glass. He'll come, she said. He always does. Daniel came up behind her, close enough to feel her trembling. Then we make sure he regrets it. He opened the duffel, laid the Glock on the coffee table next to a box of hollow points, and pulled out a burner phone he bought at a gas station along with 3 prepaid SIMs. First call is to a friend at the bureau. Second is to a private security firm I've used for celebrity clients. Third, he met her eyes. We tell the kids this is the best Christmas adventure ever, and we mean it. She stared at the gun, then at him. You're not the man I left. No, he said. I'm the man you should have stayed for. Outside, the snow kept falling, erasing tire tracks, footprints, every trace they'd ever been there. But just before dusk, Daniel stepped onto the porch to split extra wood and saw it. A single set of boot prints coming down the ridge, stopping 50 yards from the cabin, then turning back the way they'd come. Whoever it was had stood there a long time, long enough for snow to half fill the prints. And in the soft powder at the edge of the porch, someone had drawn a perfect heart pierced by an arrow, in red. The kind of red that didn't come from a marker. The red wasn't marker. It was blood, still warm enough to steam faintly in the sub-zero air. A single drop had fallen from the arrow's tip and frozen into a tiny ruby bead on the porch boards. Daniel stared at it until the world narrowed to that bead and the thud of his own heart. Inside, Elena's voice floated soft and sing-song, reading the twins their 4th story of the day about a brave little reindeer. The contrast between her lullaby calm and the threat outside almost broke him. He took a photograph of the burner, then erased the prints with a shovel of fresh snow. He told himself it was to protect the children's dreams for 1 more hour. Night came fast in the mountains. The temperature plunged to -15. Daniel kept every light off except the orange glow of the fireplace. The cabin became a cave of shadows and flame. He sat in an old leather chair facing the front door, Glock across his lap, listening to the wind scream through the pines like a living thing. At 2:17 a.m., the wind stopped. Absolute silence pressed against the windows. Then the power died. The fire still crackled, but every digital clock went black. The security panel by the door blinked red once and froze. Elena appeared in the hallway, twins clinging to her legs like koalas, eyes huge in the firelight. He's here, she breathed. Daniel stood. Take them to the root cellar. Bolt it from the inside. You do not open that door until I say the word reindeer. Understand? She hesitated only long enough to press her forehead to his. A silent apology, and thank you, and I love you all in one touch. Then she was gone, the cellar door closing with a soft thud. Daniel killed the fire with 2 buckets of snow. Darkness swallowed the house. He moved to the kitchen window. Night vision scope he bought for elk season now pressed his eye. The forest was a green sea of ghosts. Nothing moved until something did. A figure stepped from the tree lean, tall, hooded in white camo that made him look like a hole in the snow. He carried no rifle that Daniel could see, only a long, thin blade that caught the moonlight whenever he turned. He walked straight to the porch, unafraid, and stopped exactly where the bloody heart had been. He raised the blade and carved a new symbol into the log wall, the infinity sign pierced by that same arrow. Then he spoke, voice carrying clear through the glass, accented, amused. Send her out, Daniel Hargrove. The children can stay. I only want what is mine. Daniel's finger rested on the trigger. One squeeze, and this ended tonight. But cartel princes did not travel alone. The moment he fired, the forest would spit a dozen more ghosts. Victor waited, patient as winter itself. When no answer came, he smiled, teeth white in the dark, and began to sing. An old Spanish lullaby Elena used to hum when she thought Daniel was asleep. The same one she'd just sung to the twins. A psychological scalpel. Daniel felt rage rise. Hot and clean, he opened the front door. Cold rushed him like a living thing. Victor stood 10 feet away, hood thrown back now, black hair slicked with melted snow, handsome in the way fallen angels are handsome. You look older, Victor said conversationally. Love ages a man. Where are your dogs? Daniel asked. Victor spread empty hands. Tonight I come alone. A gesture of respect. Elena for your life. Fair trade. Daniel stepped onto the porch, Glock lowered but ready. She's not property. To you, perhaps. To me, she is the mother of my blood. That makes her eternal. Victor's eyes glittered. Walk away, Daniel. Build another perfect life. I will even leave you the children. Raise them as your own. A gift. Daniel laughed once, sharp. You think I want your leftovers? Victor's smile thinned, then watched them die with her. He snapped his fingers. From a ridgeline, 4 red dots appeared, laser sights dancing across the cabin walls like deadly fireflies. 6, 8, 10. Daniel's stomach dropped. Victor began walking backward toward the trees. 30 seconds. Send her out or the house becomes kindling with everyone inside. Daniel raised a Glock and put 2 rounds center mass. Victor looked down at the holes in his chest, surprised, almost offended. Blood bloomed dark against the white camo. He sank to his knees, still smiling. The red dots winked out all at once. 4-3 heartbeats of forest held its breath. Then hell arrived. Muzzle flashes ripped the night apart. Bullets chewed the porch railing, shattered windows, tore chunks from the log walls. Daniel dove inside, slammed the door, and flipped the heavy oak bars grandfather had installed for grizzlies. The cabin became a drum, every impact a thunderclap. He crawled to the cellar door on his belly. Elena! He roared over the gunfire. Reindeer! Reindeer! The bolt slid back. Elena's terrified face appeared. He shoved her and the twins toward the back hallway that led to the old storm tunnel, an escape his paranoid great-uncle had dug during the Cold War. They ran. The tunnel was earth and timber, barely 5 feet high. Daniel carried both twins piggyback, while Elena held the flashlight. Behind them, the cabin groaned as something, maybe a grenade, took out the front wall. Heat rolled down the tunnel like dragon breath. They burst out 100 yards downhill into knee-deep snow. A black helicopter waited in the clearing, rotors already turning, no markings. A man in tactical gear waved him aboard urgently. Daniel hesitated. Who the hell? Your brother-in-law. The man shouted over the engine. Navy SEAL, remember? You called in the marker, brother. Daniel almost cried. They lifted off just as the cabin exploded into a blooming orange flower against the black mountains. The shockwave rocked the chopper, but they climbed fast, banking south. Elena sat strapped between the twins, holding them so tightly they didn't even cry. She looked at Daniel across the hold. tears cutting clean tracks through the soot on her face. "He's dead," she said, not a question. Daniel nodded. "I saw him go down." She closed her eyes, whispered something in Spanish too soft to catch. The pilot's voice crackled in their headsets. "We've got a safe house in British Columbia. New names, new lives, the whole package. Courtesy of Uncle Sam, who suddenly finds Mr. Navarro's offshore accounts very interesting." Hours later, dawn painted the Pacific in rose and gold. They landed on a quiet island where eagles outnumbered people. A cedar house waited on a cliff above the sea, smoke already curling from a chimney. The twins ran screaming with joy into the surf even though it was freezing, because children are fearless when the monsters are finally dead. Daniel and Elena stood on the deck, watching. She slipped her hand into his. "I don't know how to start over again." He laced their fingers tight. "We don't start over. We start forward. 10 years late, but we start." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You kept the house." "I kept the promise," he said. "I just didn't know it until you needed it." Far out on the horizon, a pod of orcus breach, black fins slicing the sunrise like celebration. The twins shrieked and pointed. And somewhere beneath those cold, clean waves, Victor Navarro's body lay on a mountain, already feeding the crows, his empire crumbling in real time as federal agents seize planes, accounts, compounds from Cartagena to Marrakesh. Evil had come wearing charm and left wearing 2 bullets and a surprised expression. Love, scarred, stubborn, late-blooming love, had won the day. Elena turned to Daniel, eyes shining brighter than the morning itself. "Marry me again," she said, "properly this time, with peanut butter sandwiches at the reception and children who call you daddy from the first breath they remember." He kissed her, tasting salt and wood smoke and 10 redeemed years. "Yes," he said against her lips, 1,000 times yes. And as the twins ran back up the beach laughing, dripping seawater and joy, the new day broke wide open, vast, unbloody theirs. Because sometimes the story doesn't end when the villain dies. Sometimes it only begins when the villain dies. And they lived, not happily ever after, because that's for fairy tales, but fiercely, fully, together after, with the ocean singing beneath their windows and 2 small hearts that would never know what it felt like to be afraid of the dark, because their father, the real one, had stood in it with a gun and a promise and refused to blink. And that was more than enough.